Hare Krishna, everybody. So today we are doing the Canto 9, Chapter 21, verses 8 through till 12. So I'll just read the English translation first, and then we'll go through the Sanskrit. When the Shudra went away, another guest arrived, surrounded by dogs, and said, "O king, I and my company of dogs are very hungry. Please give us something to eat." With great respect, King Rantidev offered the balance of the food to the dogs and the master of the dogs, who had come as guests. The king offered them all respects and obeisances. Thereafter, only the drinking water remained, and there was only enough to satisfy one person. But when the king was just about to drink it, a Chandala appeared and said, "O king, although I am low-born, kindly give me some drinking water." Aggrieved at hearing the pitiable words of the poor, fatigued Chandala, Maharaj Rantidev spoke the following nectarian words. "I do not pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the 8 perfections of mystic yoga, nor for the salvation from repeated birth and death. I want only to stay among all the living entities and suffer all distresses on their behalf, so that they may be freed from suffering." Translation: I do not pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the 8 perfections of mystic yoga, nor for salvation from repeated birth and death. I want only to stay among all the living entities and suffer all distresses on their behalf, so that they may be freed from suffering. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Vasudev Dutt made a similar statement to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, requesting the Lord to liberate all living entities in his presence. Vasudev Dutt submitted that if they were unfit to be liberated, he himself would take all their sinful reactions and suffer personally so that the Lord might deliver them. A Vaishnav is therefore described as being bar dukha dukhi, very much aggrieved by the suffering of others. As such, a Vaishnav engages in activities for the real welfare of human society. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vancha Kalpatarubhischa Kripa Sindhubhevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I'm just going to repeat the verse and the purport because they're very short. I do not pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the 8 perfections of mystic yoga, nor for salvation from repeated birth and death. I want only to stay among all the living entities and suffer all distresses on their behalf, so that they may be freed from suffering. Srila Prabhupada explains that Vasudeva Dutt made a similar statement to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, requesting the Lord to liberate all living entities in his presence. Vasudeva Dutt submitted that if they were unfit to be liberated, he himself would take all their sinful reactions and suffer personally so that the Lord might deliver them. A Vaishnava is therefore described as being bar dukha dukhi, very much aggrieved by the suffering of others. As such, a Vaishnava engages in activities for the real welfare of human society. I'd like to begin by asking your permission to speak. This is a very deep topic. Maharaj Ranti Dev embodies full surrender and compassion and mercy. And with your blessings and good wishes and the mercy of Guru, I pray that I can say something. So in the last, in this chapter, Srila Prabhupada speaks about the glories of, in the introduction to this chapter, he speaks about the glories of Maharaj Ranti Dev. And speaks about, and comments that actually Maharaj Ranti Dev is completely surrendered. And because he is completely surrendered, he is awarded confidential service to Krishna, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada explains that this level of confidential service is not available to an ordinary devotee, but when we are fully surrendered. And actually, Prabhupada goes on to comment in this purport that this full surrender, or surrender, is directly proportionate also and has a direct relationship to the amount of compassion we have. So the more surrendered we are, the more compassionate we become. But what is this compassion? Srila Prabhupada is given the example of Vasudeva Dutt and also Maharaj Ranti Dev, who have both made a prayer which is, in terms of compassion, probably unheard of. I mean, if I asked you all, how many of us here have suffered, have felt suffering? Every single person will put up their hand, okay? How many of us have felt suffering and wished we didn't feel suffering? All of us, okay? How many of us have seen other people suffer and thanked our lucky stars that it wasn't us? Okay, so glad that wasn't me. And how many of us have seen other people suffer and actually wished, I wish they weren't suffering so much, felt some empathy and compassion? But how many of us have seen another person suffer and wished that we could take their suffering for them? That's so wonderful. That's wonderful. That's wonderful that you can reach that place. I pray that I can also have that consciousness like you. But it's very, you see the numbers reduced. We all had our hands up right at the beginning and the numbers dropped right down. So what is this compassion? Srila Prabhupada in the Madhya Leela, in the 15th chapter, where actually the glories of Vasudeva Dutt are elaborated on more. See, what happens is Lord Chaitanya is glorifying his deep, intimate associates, such as Vasudeva Dutt and Haridas Thakur. And when he comes to glorify Vasudeva Dutt, explaining that Vasudeva Dutt is so dear to him that his body belongs to Vasudeva Dutt, and he starts to glorify the characteristics of Vasudeva Dutt, he feels humbled and embarrassed. And he prays to Lord Chaitanya that, actually, I see so many devotees, I see so many people suffering, and that suffering interferes with their devotional service, with them wanting to take to devotional service. Please, let me take their suffering. Even if they're unfit, even if they're unqualified, let me take their suffering so that they're free to be liberated. They're free from this burden. I will take it. I will take it. And Lord Chaitanya explains to him, you are so dear to me. You do not need to take this suffering. In fact, Krishna is so powerful, even if every single person in this universe was liberated and this universe no longer existed, it would make no difference to Krishna. So he grants him, he says, I will do anything for you. This same mood Maharaj Ranti Dev has. He's been fasting for so many days, not just he, but his family. His family are his dependents. They're surrendered to him. That doesn't just mean being a doormat. They also follow his instructions, his mood. They're carried by that mood. They're nourished by his mood of surrender. And so they are also having to suffer as a result of his compassion, but they're also driven and inspired by his compassion. So he's not in a place where he's not hungry, he's just had a big fat meal and people are coming to, ask him for something to eat. He's literally hungry, dehydrated, more hungry than probably any of us in this room have ever felt, more thirsty than any of us in this room have ever felt. And yet he's still making this prayer. I mean, where it says, in verse 9, aggrieved at hearing the pitiable words of the poor, fatigued Chandala, Maharaj Rantidev spoke the following nectarian words. How many times do we speak nectarian words when someone asks us for something that we don't yet have enough of? This is the sign of a surrendered soul. So Srila Prabhupada explains that in relation to Srila Vasudev Dutt, in the purport in Madhya Leela chapter 15, he explains that actually Vasudev Dutt, being an incarnation of Prahlad Maharaj, is actually universal love itself, for he is willing to sacrifice everything and fully engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. Our acharyas, Lord Chaitanya's associates, they are sources of great inspiration for many of us. And sometimes we have an affinity for a particular associate and their particular mood. I remember His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Maharaj, this year is his 10th anniversary since his departure, and he left his body in June 2005. And he was very much inspired by Vasudev Dutt's mood. He was very much inspired by embracing this consciousness of compassion amongst the devotees, and mostly, foremost, as a great devotee does for himself. He would often speak about, and by his behavior show how a compassionate devotee serves others and feels towards others. And he would often make a prayer in this mood of Vasudev Dutt. And even in his final days, for those of you who don't know, Srila Bhaktitirtha Swami, he departed this world in June 2005 after a very rapid deterioration in his health secondary to cancer. But his cancer for him was a blessing, and as he explained, if his suffering gave an opportunity for devotees to be inspired and uplifted, then there was no greater joy for him. And one thing that I was astounded by, particularly in the final days, when actually, in my profession, I see people die and try to die and not succeed in trying to die, and the suffering that they feel. And I've seen people leave from cancer, etc. But what Maharaj showed was a completely opposite spectrum, really showed how somebody who leaves their body in transcendental consciousness really is beyond the body. His body was probably, emaciated to the brink of, I don't know how anybody could survive in a body like that. And yet his consciousness, when somebody's really literally at that point where the body is so emaciated, they're dehydrated, their mind is not their own, all they're thinking about is, please, somebody relieve my suffering. And Maharaj's mood was completely not like that. His mood was, are devotees still inspired? Are devotees still coming back? And one of the testaments to that was, actually, we've got so many emails from devotees saying that, I haven't seen a temple for 20 years because I fell into so much suffering or something fried me out. But your journey and your prayers for us have actually inspired me to come back. He had many letters like this from Gurukulis, from Prabhupada disciples, and also people who actually weren't devotees were hearing about the realizations and experiences of somebody who's leaving the body but not in mundane consciousness, and they were inspired to ask more. Many of his books that he wrote at that time connect with his consciousness, like Beggar 4. So Maharaj often spoke about compassion and inviting compassion into our community more and developing it. He would speak, he would often explain, and Srila Prabhupada and Krishna, of course he echoes them, that compassion is one of the qualities of a devotee. It's natural to us. It's natural for us at our inherent consciousness, in our constitutional position. We are naturally compassionate. We don't have to learn to be compassionate. However, we have to practice compassion. And he would speak about how this compassion is necessary because suffering is part of material existence. And particularly in Kali Yuga, we look around and there's all sorts of abominable suffering. There's day-to-day suffering, the pangs of hunger, the pangs of tiredness, the pangs of relationship difficulties, which is common to probably everybody in Kali Yuga, since it's the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. But there are even worse things. Things become really quite dark in Kali Yuga. And there are things going on this planet which we cannot even imagine. That suffering, as Krishna explains, can be a catalyst to come to devotional service. It's one of the types of devotees that approaches Krishna, actually out of distress. But once we approach Krishna, that same distress, that same suffering can be an opportunity to either grow and really become strong in our Krishna consciousness, or it can become a distraction. We understand this in some ways as anartha nivritti, that when we're going through this process of cleansing, when we take to the process, we go through the process of purification. So unwanted habits, unwanted qualities, unwanted and unhealthy patterns start to manifest. We start to see them as we clean our room, as we clean our mind, as we clean this vehicle. We start to see the rubbish, the baggage that we have. I still remember when I very first became a devotee when I was at university, and I would hear about how, envy is the biggest stumbling block in Krishna consciousness. I was thinking, no, I don't think I'm envious. I hate envy. In fact, I don't lie. I've had so much envy in my life, I completely try not to feel envious. I was so in illusion about my own faults, but as I took to the process, I still remember the first time I really saw my own envy. Oh my God, I'm envious. And it burned. It felt horrible. And it was actually very humbling to see. First, my ego wanted to ignore it. No. It must be something else you're feeling. Try and rationalize it. Try and think of something else. No, really, it's their fault. No, it's nothing to do. But then really, as I actually took a step back, I thought, actually, my heart is riddled with envy. It didn't look nice. It felt unpleasant. Sometimes people start chanting and they say, yeah, I'm actually having more trouble since I started chanting than before I started chanting. And actually, if any of you have, we have the analogy of cleaning a room. Has anybody ever cleaned a room, especially with a jharu? Not even a broom, but with a jharu. Okay? When you go into a dirty room, especially after a long time, dust is settled. You can't see it. So maybe some of you have mothers or mother-in-laws who come to your house and they run their finger along your fireplace and they do this. They're looking for the tiniest speck of dust. So it's settled. You can't see it. But the minute you start taking a cloth or a broom to that room, that dust, it starts to fill the air. In fact, it can be if the room's very dirty, it can be quite blinding. It can get into your throat. It can make you cough. It can make you think, maybe I'll leave the room and go somewhere else for a little while, take a break. Okay? It can make you want to give up. So this happens. This happens in our Krishna consciousness. Sometimes we have an unrealistic expectation that now I'm chanting, or now I've taken initiation, I have a clean slate, there'll be no more suffering, and no more difficulties, and on the freeway, back to Krishna, and I'll just chant and be happy. Which is true. That is absolutely true. But that room has to be cleaned first, because it's up to us to let go of our unwanted things. Okay, we have to be willing to let go of our unwanted envy, relationship difficulties, our desires, the things that block compassion, our suffering, because it's ultimately because of our desires, because of our unwanted things that we actually suffer. It's really not the situation, it's how we perceive the situation. Maharaj Rantidev was perceiving his situation as the Lord's mercy. He was seeing it as something positive. He was seeing it as an opportunity to serve Krishna. He wasn't viewing it as, I'm hungry, give me a break. Me and my family haven't eaten for days, and here you are, you're coming to ask for my, last glass of water that's left. He wasn't. He was completely flipping it the other way, seeing it for what it truly was. And for this, he's awarded with the most confidential service. So this cleaning of our room, I was talking about, Maharaj would often talk about, and we've heard this from many devotees, that anartha nivritti is not just about cleaning, but also about letting go of what we find. What do I mean by this? So, has anybody here spring cleaned their wardrobe? Or when you're unpacking or clearing out your shed? And in that shed or in your wardrobe, you have got maybe years and years of things that you've accumulated. They have some sentimental value, or you liked it 10 years ago. And you start to remove those things. And you make a pile of, I don't really need it. I'd really like to keep it. And when you first start off your pile of, I don't want it, is really big and you're feeling very satisfied. Oh, this is wonderful. You know, these are all the things that I don't want. And your pile of what you want, yeah, I'm going to have, it's really small. You're thinking, fantastic, my cupboard's going to be empty. I'll be so organized. Life will be much easier. But then as you go to throw them in the bag, I remember when I was given this, I could actually use it again. Maybe I'll put it back. You know, I'll just hold on to it for a bit longer. And before you know it, that pile's huge again. And the pile that's going in a bin, you don't even need a bin bag for it. You know, it's so small. It's just, one thing. Okay, I'll do it again in 6 months. Maybe I'll be ready to get rid of more. So sometimes this happens in Krishna consciousness. We feel, we see our narthas. They're clear. They're standing in front of us. And we think, I've got to get rid of it. Please pray for me that I can let go of my envy. Please pray for me, that I can let go of my attachment for this or that. And, devotees pray for us. And then when the time comes to let go, it's actually, I think I still have some use for it. Let me hold on to it. Because, when I hold on to mistrust, it protects me from people who might exploit me. Let me hold on to it for a little bit. Because, I still have a doubt that if I start trusting completely, open-heartedly, that maybe Krishna might not have my back, just in case. Let me just in case. Let me just put that one back. So we do this with all of our things. So, Maharaj's mood, he saw this. He saw this, that in our, not just in our society, but on the planet globally, it gets to a point where our suffering can become a tripping point. It can cause people to turn away. So he really would invite and encourage devotees to develop compassion. So how do we develop this compassion? It's directly proportionate to our level of surrender. So, it's funny, we could have 365 days a year, we could talk about the glories of chanting and never be finished. It actually does start with our chanting because it's our constitutional position to be compassionate. The better our chanting, the more that quality will manifest because our true nature will manifest. Now, we understand there's 3 types of chanting. There's chanting at the offensive stage, where we're inattentive. Maybe we're really hanging on to Lord Chaitanya's statement that there are no hard and fast rules to chanting, and that even at the offensive stage we can make some progress. But at this stage, clearing is slow, because when we're chanting, doing anything offensively, we're also accumulating the consequences of offenses. I remember in a lecture, Shiva Maharaj talks about what inattentive chanting is like in relationship to Krishna. So if you invite someone over for a conversation or a meeting, and while they're speaking to you, or while you're speaking to them, you're distracted, you'll start reading a book and you start looking the other way, that person's not going to want to spend much time with you. So the next stage is namabhas, so the shadow of chanting. So this shadow of chanting, the key difference between offensive or inattentive chanting and this is that one is endeavoring. So in Haridas Thakur in Harinam Chintamani explains that actually at this stage it's the sincere endeavor to make our chanting attentive that makes us make progress quickly. He's not saying the chanting is necessarily attentive all the time yet, but we're making that sincere endeavor consistently. What is this like? So we invite someone, they sit, they speak with us, we speak with them. So Krishna is sitting with us. And if we might find ourselves distracted by but he sees that we're trying to give our full attention to him. So, you're trying, even though you have so many distractions, you're so busy. When we go to meet someone, if we see they're so busy and they're still trying to give us attention, we actually think, I'm going to come back. This person actually has affection for me. Until which then that carries us to the point where all our coverings, our attachments, our anarthas, they start to disappear. And we start to actually, so all that busyness, that distraction disappears, we can have a full, attentive conversation with Krishna and really see him for who he is, and his name, form, qualities and pastimes manifest. But as well as that, our true nature, that compassion fully manifests. But before we get to this stage, we practice compassion. Can somebody from the audience maybe share something that they find helps to bring out compassion in them? Service. Can you say more?
Yes. Not just in this area.
Mm-hmm.
One that's involved with some sort of service, let's say helping people get off drugs, for example. One becomes compassionate about the struggle and it helps.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. So serving others, definitely another process for us to bring our compassion to the forefront. But Mataji has also explained that when we serve those who are actually suffering and help them with their plight, it invokes compassion. We actually see what suffering is. And, everybody put their hands up when they said, when I asked who here has seen someone else suffer, and they've been grateful that it wasn't them. Okay, gratitude is another important way to invoke and bring forward our compassion. When we're grateful for what we have, we don't get so lost in what we don't have. We don't begrudge our misery, and we then make ourselves more available to serve others. As we see others suffering, it naturally makes us want to alleviate their suffering. And sometimes we can get closed off because, our process is very simple, but it's extremely powerful. It quickly brings us to a peaceful place, a place of mode of goodness, which is very satisfying and comfortable. So it can sometimes make us blinkered about the suffering that is there around us. Serving others who are suffering actually minimizes our own suffering, increases our gratitude, but also increases our compassion. Anyone else want to share other ways that we could perhaps increase our compassion? Can you? Okay, so Shri Radha Gokul Nanda ki jai, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai. Mataji, you're talking about empathy and putting ourselves in other people's shoes. Can you say a little bit more?
I just think that people like you and I, we've got counseling, coaching, things like that. When we put ourselves in their shoes, we get a better feeling of what they're going through, and it naturally moves.
So putting ourselves in other people's shoes is empathy. Slightly different to pity, slightly different to sympathy. Sympathy comes from a position of, I feel sad for you. Whereas empathy comes from a position of, actually, if I walk today in your shoes, put myself, I know exactly what you're going through. And that's when we make a real real connection with devotees. Anyone else would like to share? Hare Krishna.
My personal experience. When we speak up, please. In my personal experience,
I can repeat a little bit of what you say. Yes.
When we karmically share the same pain as another, then it's easy to be compassionate. As they say, walk a mile in my shoes. Until we've actually walked that mile in their shoes, it's very difficult to be genuinely compassionate.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So Prabhuji's made a statement that when we share karmic suffering, so we've shared similar experiences with others, we can be compassionate in a way that perhaps when we haven't walked in those shoes, we can't. So even with empathy, we are still kind of trying to see or feel like we're walking in those shoes. But when you've actually walked in those shoes, then you can really connect with somebody's suffering, and it can be a powerful tool to helping them. Actually, this brings us full circle back to Maharaj Rantidev, Vasudev Dutt, and actually Srila Prabhupada. They did the most compassionate thing. Yes, it's very compassionate to alleviate people's material suffering, especially devotees. It's like giving someone a leg up when they're trying to climb over a fence. Give them a helping hand. But even better is if we can give people solutions to their suffering, long-term solutions to their suffering. And Srila Prabhupada explains that actually a real Vaishnava engages, he says it here, in activities for the real welfare of human society. And we see this in Krishna consciousness. We do so many things. We have our Food for Life program. We have so many different programs within Krishna consciousness, within ISKCON, where we are alleviating people's hunger. Okay, we have different types of services available now within the devotee community to aid with the secondary things that can make our devotional service difficult. But the undercurrent of all of that is actually re-establishing our relationship with Krishna, having clear vision to see the world for what it is. So actually we don't have to suffer anymore, even in this lifetime, because we don't experience this life as suffering. We experience it as an adventure, as an opportunity. And this is not a hard-hearted vision, actually, because when we can truly come to this vision, then we can actually truly share this message with others. Srila Prabhupada's strength and ability in giving others Krishna consciousness was based on compassion, was based on his love for others. That's why even a smile could make someone want to become Krishna conscious. My little girl, she's 7, she's reading Prabhupada Nectar at the moment, which has lots of anecdotes about Srila Prabhupada. And, one thing about the anecdotes about Srila Prabhupada that strikes me is that even when he wasn't speaking about Krishna, even when he was just being him, he was inspiring people to take to Krishna consciousness. For example, the gardener at the manor, in the early days, whose name I don't recall, he says that actually Prabhupada never preached to him. Prabhupada never said anything to him about Krishna. Not a word. But because he was kind to him, he was interested in what he did. Who stops to talk to the gardener? In any normal, household or big grounds, who stops to talk to the gardener? Prabhupada stopped to talk to the gardener here. And he said, that made me want to become a devotee. I thought, who is this personality? How is this personality like this? That he would take interest in me, just a simple gardener. He said, just with his smile, he made me feel like being a devotee. And we often talk about when we're preaching, that actually if we're compassionate to those we're preaching to, if we try to come from their position, what is it that they need? Rather than bashing them over the head with philosophy, what is it that they need? How can we serve them? And show them that actually Krishna consciousness is the greatest vehicle to give them what they need. That has to come from a place of compassion. And often it's universal. That need that people have is quite universal in that people usually just want to be accepted for who they are, for all their quirks, for all their weird ideas, for all their unusual habits. And when they're accepted like that and they're shown something better, then they feel very ready to take it up because they don't feel judged or belittled. And sometimes we have this very strongly for new people, but we don't have this level of forgiveness, acceptance and compassion often for those who have already taken to the process, because we have this thing, okay, well, you're in the process, you should already be better. Okay, and we often hear this analogy of, and there's 2 friends walking by the Ganga, and they see a person bathing. Actually, he's by the river. He's very extremely dirty, and one friend says to the other, "Oh, let's move away. Look at him. He's just so disgustingly dirty. Oh, I can smell him from here. Just move away from him." The other friend says to him, out of compassion, "Actually, but look, he's just about to take his bath, or he's in the process. Soon he'll be clean. We don't have to stay away from him." So this acceptance we have at the beginning for people who are new, and for, when we're first giving the process, actually we should have even more for each other, because we've already taken to the process. And one day, those around us who we think, okay, maybe they're a little stuck, maybe they're doing something wrong, maybe they're not so clean yet and we expect them to be more clean, we should be patient with them. Because that actually, this is the spirit of camaraderie. When we accept with compassion, we also empower other people to be able to move forward, move past their issues. When we tell them they are their issue, they over-identify with it. When we say, you're not your issue, how can I serve you to deal with your issue? They feel empowered to move forward. And we all have that experience. We've all had that experience. When we're struggling, what's one of the things that stops us from sharing with others that we're struggling? That they will identify our issue with who we are. So that's you. Oh, yes, that's just you. You're just greedy. You've got to give up this greediness, Prabhu. Mataji, you've got to stop being so greedy. You've got to be so attached. Stop being so attached. I said, okay, you have a hankering for this. Tell me, how can I serve you? How can I ease your burden of hankering? So this compassion is really important. And Srila Prabhupada's compassion for all of us, and 50 years now it's been since he departed, to make his journey, to be able to facilitate all of us being able to sit here and speak to each other like this. 50 years ago, this place was just someone's house. 50 years ago, we were not having transcendental conversations about personalities like Maharaj Rantidev and Vasudev Dutt in this room. Maybe they were this was a ballroom and they were dancing and I don't know what they were doing in this room. So because of Srila Prabhupada's compassion, because he, sacrificed his health, his time, his happiness, well, at least his material happiness, so that we could be here. Look, we're so blessed. So if we can take shelter of Srila Prabhupada more, use this, particularly this anniversary time, to get to know Srila Prabhupada more, then we can also imbibe and be a medium for his compassion, even if we're not feeling that compassion ourselves. We look at Maharaj Rantidev, and what Srila Prabhupada explains about Maharaj Rantidev is that those individuals who served him, who worked for him, either in an official capacity or unofficial capacity, those who were his dependents, his citizens, also his relatives, those who surrendered to him and followed what he did, didn't question, why are you doing this? Understood. He's fully surrendered. He's coming from a place which we don't understand, but we will take shelter because we trust him, because we know he's doing the right thing. Actually, they all achieved the same thing that Maharaj Rantidev did because of two things. One is they surrendered to a sadhu, and two, because of that sadhu's mercy. We all need each other. We need each other's good wishes and mercy. What is mercy? It is simply good wishes. It's not mercy. It's not some mystical, thing that we have to try and intellectually and esoterically understand. Mercy is someone's good wishes. A devotee's good wishes are always directed towards whatever good wishes I have for you. I pray that they manifest as you coming closer to Krishna. So whatever we do for a devotee, however big or small that sadhu is, it could be something as small as we've given them a glass of water. Maybe we've smiled at them when they're feeling down. It doesn't have to be that we've done a huge thing and given them a donation of £500,000. It could be something very small. Maybe we gave them a space next to us in the kirtan when it was completely packed up, so they don't have to watch it in the lobby. Just these small things. We invoke each other's good wishes. And the amazing thing about good wishes is that they can be activated and influence us at any time in our Krishna consciousness. Any time. And we don't even have to ask for them. Because if we've genuinely pleased someone, we may not get reciprocation from them immediately, but we'll get it. This is the beautiful thing about Krishna consciousness. We will get their reciprocation exactly when we need it. And we may not even know it's coming from them. Just think about it. All of us, in our lives, inevitably, we will make mistakes. We will make offenses in our Krishna consciousness. And we'll fall in those little ditches that don't take us backwards in our Krishna consciousness, but block our progress. Who is it who pulls us out? It's the devotees who pull us out. It's those people who have good wishes for us. And it's not always the person who has big status or big position. It's the person we've pleased. And we never know when that person's going to be walking by. And just remember, I remember that time, so-and-so, they were so kind. My legs were hurting so much and they offered me a chair. So kind. That good wish goes out into the universe. Krishna hears it. That's it. Someone's helped us to get out of that ditch. Such a small thing. Such a small thing. But such a huge impact. We get wrapped up. I've only got 2 minutes, so I'll finish soon. We get wrapped up in, how can I have relationships which are offense-free? How can I not offend the devotees? If we flip it and turn it into, how can I please the devotees? Then we will automatically avoid offenses. Because we are going down a positive track rather than trying to avoid a negative track. Avoiding a negative track doesn't necessarily mean that we found the positive one. But if we walk a positive track, my motivation is today to try and please the devotees. It doesn't have to be with any particular, I think just what do they want? Remember one email that really struck me, it stayed with me for a long time. To Bhakti Maharaj, Maharaj, please tell me how I can serve the devotees. His answer was so simple. He said, ask them. So simple. Ask them. Because we don't know what somebody needs. We have to ask them, how can I serve you? It could just be that chair. Thank you. Please, can I have a chair? My legs are hurting. So thank you very much. We're out of time. Maybe I can take 1 or 2 questions. Is that okay?